Hey, listen carefully, just for the next few seconds. What if the struggles you've been facing, the battles you didn't ask for, and the pressure that seems to follow you everywhere are not random? What if they are signs? What if they are evidence that something extraordinary has been placed on your life? Because when God marks a person for a purpose, life often begins to look very different. The path becomes narrower. The resistance becomes stronger. The spiritual weight becomes heavier. Not because you are abandoned, but because you are appointed. There are moments in life when you begin to sense that something deeper is happening within you. You cannot explain it to everyone. You cannot fully understand it yourself, but something has changed. The things that once satisfied you no longer do. The places you once fit into now feel uncomfortable. The people around you may not understand why you become more sensitive, more aware, more restless. But what if that discomfort is not confusion? What if it is calling? When God places a dangerous anointing on someone, it does not always look like immediate favor or visible success. Often it begins in hidden battles. It begins in seasons of isolation. It begins when you feel misunderstood, stretched, and challenged in ways others cannot comprehend. The first sign that you may be dangerously anointed is this: your life is marked by unusual opposition. You notice that obstacles seem to appear whenever you move towards something meaningful. You try to step forward, and resistance meets you. You commit to growth, and distractions multiply. You decide to pray more, and suddenly your mind becomes a battlefield. You choose to walk in faith, and fear begins whispering louder than ever. Have you noticed that? It's because darkness often recognizes what light is becoming before you do. The enemy does not waste his energy on what poses no threat. Resistance is often proof of significance. The battles you are fighting may not be signs that you are weak. They may be confirmation that your life carries spiritual weight. The attacks are not always about where you are. Sometimes they are about where you are going. Think about it. Why do you feel pressure when you try to obey? Why does confusion increase when clarity is near? Why do certain relationships suddenly shift when you begin to grow spiritually? It is because your trauma, ends formation, disrupts what was comfortable. Your progress threatens what was holding you back. But here is what you must understand. Opposition is not your enemy, it is often your evidence. Pressure reveals strength. Fire reveals purity. Trials reveal endurance. God allows certain battles not to destroy you, but to develop you. Every challenge is shaping something in you that comfort never could. Every painful moment is teaching your spirit how to stand. You may feel tired. You may feel tempted to give up. But do not mistake hardship for abandonment. The storm around you may actually be preparing authority within you. The second sign that you may be dangerously anointed is this: you carry a deep burden that others do not understand. You feel things differently. You notice spiritual emptiness where others see normal life. You cannot ignore pain. You cannot pretend everything is fine when your spirit senses something deeper. You may carry an unusual compassion for others. You may feel drawn to encourage, to pray, to speak truth, to lift burdens, even when no one asked you to. And sometimes that burden feels heavy. You wonder why your heart breaks over things that others ignore. You wonder why you feel responsible to intercede, to care, to stay awake spiritually when everyone else seems asleep. You may feel alone in that burden. But that burden may be part of your anointing. God often entrusts his deepest assignments to those willing to feel deeply. The burden is not punishment. It is preparation. It is sensitivity. It is spiritual awareness. Anointed people often cannot escape the pull toward purpose. They may try to ignore it. They may try to run from it. They may try to blend in, but the call keeps returning. The conviction keeps speaking. The fire keeps stirring. You may feel like you do not belong in ordinary conversations anymore. You may feel restless in places that once felt comfortable. You may feel a holy dissatisfaction that keeps pushing you towards something more. That is because God is not calling you to live casually. Dangerous anointing changes how you see everything. It changes how you think. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what breaks your heart. It changes what gives you peace. And yes, it can feel lonely. Not everyone will understand your journey. Some people will misunderstand your boundaries. Some will question your intensity. Some will distance themselves because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. Do not let that discourage you. When God separates you, He is not isolating you to harm you. He is refining you. He is removing distractions. He is teaching you to depend on Him more deeply than ever before. There are lessons that can only be learned in quiet places. There are revelations that only come when the noise fades. There are strengths that only emerge when support disappears. So if you feel misunderstood, if you feel stretched, if you feel like your life carries an unusual weight, do not panic. Pause and ask yourself, could this be preparation? Could the resistance be training? Could the burden be evidence? Could the loneliness be invitation? God does not anoint people so they can feel comfortable. He anoints them so they can carry responsibility. He anoints them so they can stand when others fall. He anoints them so they can bring light into dark places. And dangerous anointing requires dangerous trust. You must trust when you do not understand. You must keep walking when you cannot see. You must remain faithful when nothing feels easy. Because the same God who, O called, you will sustain you. The same God who allowed the pressure will provide the strength. The same God who marked your life has already prepared what you need for the journey ahead. So do not shrink back. Do not silence what God placed within you. Do not apologize for your sensitivity, your conviction, or your spiritual hunger. If the opposition has been intense, if the burden has been heavy, perhaps it is because your calling is greater than you realized. Perhaps heaven has trusted you with something powerful. Perhaps what feels dangerous is actually divine. And perhaps, even now, God is preparing you not merely to survive your season, but sometimes the greatest evidence that your life carries divine purpose is not found in comfort, ease, or visible success, but in the unusual opposition that seems to follow you wherever you go. You may have noticed that every time you make a decision to move closer to what is right, something rises against you. Every time you choose faith over fear, peace over chaos, or obedience over compromise, resistance appears. It can feel exhausting. It can make you question yourself. It can make you wonder if you are doing something wrong. Boo. What if the very battles you are facing are not proof that you are off track? What if they are confirmation that you are exactly where you need to be? Not every struggle is spiritual, but there are moments when the pressure in your life feels deeper than ordinary problems. It feels like an invisible resistance. You try to move forward, but something pushes back. You try to grow, but distractions multiply. You commit yourself to prayer, and suddenly your mind feels more restless than ever. You decide to let go of fear, and fear begins speaking louder. You step into purpose, and obstacles seem to increase. This is often when people begin to doubt themselves, but this may be the exact moment they need to understand something important. Darkness often reacts when it senses the light within you. The enemy does not waste his strength attacking what carries no significance. Intense resistance can be a sign that your life carries spiritual weight. Your prayers may be more powerful than you realize. Your obedience may be more threatening than you understand. Your growth may be disrupting forces that were comfortable with your weakness. Every step you take toward God can shake something loose in the unseen world. That is why opposition should not always be interpreted as failure. Sometimes it is evidence. Sometimes it is confirmation. Sometimes it is proof that something valuable is being protected, prepared, or awakened within you. Think about the moments when you decided to change, the moment you committed to becoming stronger, the moment you chose to forgive, the moment you chose discipline over distraction, the moment you decided to trust God even when life made no sense. Did resistance increase? Did things suddenly become harder? That is often how growth begins. Pressure arrives not to destroy you, but to reveal what has been developing inside you all along. Gold is refined through fire. Strength is built through resistance. Faith is tested through uncertainty. Character is shaped through adversity. You cannot become spiritually mature without facing moments that challenge everything you thought you knew. Those moments feel uncomfortable, but they are necessary. God uses hardship to deepen your trust. He uses obstacles to strengthen your endurance. He uses opposition to teach you how to stand when everything around you feels unstable. Many people walk away. Why? When life becomes difficult? Because they assume difficulty means defeat. But those who understand purpose see hardship differently. They begin to recognize that pressure often precedes promotion. They understand that the battles they face may be preparing them for responsibilities they cannot yet imagine. There are times when you will feel tired. You will wonder why the path feels so heavy. You will question why others seem to move forward easily while your journey feels filled with challenges. You may even ask why obedience seems to come with such a cost. But remember this: what God is building in you is often more important than what He is building around you. The world measures success by visible outcomes. God often measures progress by invisible transformation. Your struggles may be shaping patience. Your disappointments may be strengthening endurance. Your setbacks may be teaching humility. Your waiting may be building trust. Every difficult moment is developing something within your spirit that comfort could never produce. And sometimes the greatest challenge is not the external pressure, but the internal battle. The temptation to quit, the urge to doubt, the voice T, hat whispers that none of this matters. That is where spiritual strength is formed. Strength is not built when everything feels easy. Strength is built when you choose to keep moving while carrying weight. You may not understand why certain battles have chosen your life. You may not know why some seasons feel heavier than others. But do not assume that hardship means God has stepped away. In many cases, the opposite is true. Sometimes the greatest evidence of His hand on your life is the way He keeps sustaining you through storms that should have broken you. Look at how far you have already come. Think about the moments you thought you would not survive. Think about the tears you cried in silence. Think about the battles you fought alone. And yet, you are still here. You are still standing. You are still believing. That is not weakness. That is proof of grace. Opposition may surround you, but it cannot define you. Resistance may challenge you, but it cannot stop what God has appointed. The pressure may feel intense, but it is shaping something powerful within you. Every battle is teaching you how to fight with faith. Every obstacle is teaching you how to trust beyond what you can see. Every challenge is preparing you to carry what only strengthened shoulders can hold. Do not run from the pressure. Do not fear the resistance. Do not interpret the difficulty as rejection. Sometimes the very thing trying to discourage you is revealing how significant your purpose truly is. You were never meant to live a life untouched by challenge. You were meant to become someone who can stand firm in the middle of it. Someone whose faith grows stronger under pressure. Someone whose peace remains steady in uncertainty. Someone who understands that unusual opposition often accompanies unusual calling. And if the battles have increased, if the resistance has intensified, if the path has felt harder than expected, perhaps it is because what lies ahead carries more purpose than you ever imagined. To step into the purpose for which you were chosen. There are moments in life when you begin to feel things more deeply than those around you. What once seemed ordinary no longer satisfies your spirit. Conversations that used to hold your attention now feel empty. Places that once felt comfortable now seem unfamiliar. You begin to notice pain more intensely, not just your own, the struggles of others. You feel drawn to pray when others remain silent. You feel compelled to encourage when others walk away. You carry concerns in your heart that you cannot easily explain. And sometimes that burden feels so heavy that you wonder why you feel so different. What if that deep burden is not something to fear? What if it is one of the clearest signs that something sacred is happening within you? A unique spiritual burden often reveals a unique anointing. It is not always loud. It does not always come with dramatic moments. Often, it arrives quietly, settling into your heart as an unshakable awareness that your life is meant for more than ordinary existence. You begin to feel responsibility for things others ignore. You begin to sense spiritual emptiness in places where others see normality. You feel the need to pray, to intercede, to care, to stand in the gap for people who may never know you carried them in your heart. This kind of burden can feel overwhelming. You may ask yourself why certain things affect you so deeply. Why do the struggles of others stay with you? Why do certain moments move you to tears while others remain untouched? Why do you feel restless when something feels spiritually out of place? Why does your heart keep pulling you toward truth, toward purpose, toward something greater? It is because your spirit may be responding to a calling that your mind has not yet fully understood. Those who carry a divine assignment often carry divine sensitivity. They are aware of things beyond what is visible. They feel a weight that cannot be explained through ordinary language. They notice when something is spiritually wrong. They feel compelled to act even when no one else sees the need. This burden is not weakness. It is not emotional instability. It is not something to suppress or ignore. It is often evidence that your heart is being shaped for something sacred. The burden may come in many forms. It may be a constant desire to help others find hope. It may be a deep concern for broken people. It may be an unusual passion for truth. It may be a longing to bring peace where there is pain. It may be a strong sense that your life must serve a purpose beyond personal comfort. At times, this burden can make you feel lonely. Others may not understand why you care so deeply. They may tell you that you are too sensitive, too tense, too focused on things that do not matter to them. They may not understand why you cannot simply ignore what troubles your spirit. But not everyone is meant to carry what you carry. Some people are called to observe. Others are called to respond. Some are content with surface-level living. Others are stirred by something deeper. If you are one of those people who cannot ignore what your spirit feels, then you are a true friend. That may be because you are being prepared for an assignment that requires spiritual depth. The burden is often part of the preparation. Before purpose is revealed, responsibility is often felt. Before clarity arrives, sensitivity develops. Before direction becomes obvious, your heart begins to align with what matters most. God often prepares people internally long before their outward calling becomes visible. That is why you may feel restless even when life appears calm. That is why you may feel unsatisfied even when everything seems fine. Something inside you is being awakened. Something is calling you higher. The burden may also push you into prayer. You may find yourself speaking to God more often, not because someone told you to, but because your heart feels draw. Where? Prayer becomes less of a duty and more of a necessity. It becomes the place where your burden is carried, where your questions are heard, where your spirit finds strength. This is not accidental. The burden that drives you to God is often the same burden that prepares you to serve others. And yet, carrying such a burden requires endurance. There will be days when you feel emotionally drained, days when the weight feels too heavy, days when you wonder why you cannot simply live without feeling everything so deeply. In those moments, remember this: what you carry was never meant to be carried alone. The burden may have been given to you, but God never intended for it to crush you. He gave it to draw you closer. He gave it to increase your compassion. He gave it to deepen your dependence on Him. He gave it to prepare you for a purpose that requires more than talent, it requires heart. Do not reject your sensitivity. Do not silence the convictions that stir within you. Do not ignore the moments when your spirit feels moved. Those moments may be sacred invitations. Your burden is not random. Your compassion is not accidental. Your restlessness may be the beginning, energy of something powerful. Many people spend their lives trying to escape discomfort, but those marked for greater purpose often discover that discomfort becomes the very place where calling begins to take shape. The burden teaches you how to listen. It teaches you how to care. It teaches you how to stand in the gap. It teaches you how to feel what others cannot feel. And through that process, something beautiful begins to happen. Your pain becomes compassion. Your questions become prayer. Your restlessness becomes direction. Your burden becomes purpose. What once felt heavy begins to make sense. What once felt confusing begins to reveal meaning. And you begin to realize that the deep burden you carry is not something to fear, it may be one of the clearest signs that your life has been entrusted with something far greater than yourself. There are seasons in life when everything begins to change, and one of the most difficult parts of that change is the feeling of being alone. The people you once felt closest to may no longer understand you. Conversations that once felt natural now feel distant. The places where you once felt accepted may suddenly feel uncomfortable. You may look around and wonder why you feel so disconnected from the life that once felt familiar. It can be confusing. It can be painful. It can make you question whether something is wrong. But what if this season of isolation is not punishment? What if it is preparation? Sometimes, before God can lead you into the fullness of your purpose, He must first separate you from what has become too comfortable. He must pull you away from distractions, from noise, from voices that keep you tied to old versions of yourself. Isolation is often misunderstood because it feels like loss. It feels like something is being taken away. Relationships shift. Opportunities close. Familiar patterns break. But what feels like removal may actually be refinement. There are lessons that can only be learned in quiet places. There are truths that can only be heard when the world becomes silent. There are parts of your character that can only be developed when external support fades, and you are left with nothing but your faith. This is why seasons of isolation can feel so intense. They force you to confront things you may have been avoiding. They strip away distractions. They expose fears. They reveal hidden tendencies. They show you where you have placed your trust. Without realizing it, many people build their identity around approval, routine, and the comfort of being understood by others. But when God is preparing someone for a greater calling, He often removes those familiar supports so they can learn to stand on something stronger. You may feel misunderstood right now. People may not understand your boundaries, your changes, or your desire for something deeper. They may question why you no longer fit into the same spaces. They may wonder why you seem different. Even those closest to you may not recognize who you are becoming. That can be painful. There is a grief that comes with outgrowing environments that once felt like home. There is sadness in realizing that not everyone can go where you are being called. There is loneliness in walking a path that others cannot see. But loneliness does not mean abandonment. Being separated does not mean being forgotten. In many cases, isolation is where God does His deepest work. When the noise fades, you begin to hear His voice more clearly. When the crowd disappears, your dependence on Him grows stronger. When external validation is removed, your identity begins to root itself in something eternal. This process is not easy. It requires patience. It requires trust. It requires the courage to sit in uncomfortable silence and believe that something meaningful is happening even when nothing seems visible. Isolation teaches you how to be still. It teaches you how to listen. It teaches you how to trust when there is no applause, no reassurance, and no immediate answers. You begin to learn that faith is not built on feelings. It is built on trust. You begin to understand that purpose is not always revealed through activity. Sometimes it is revealed through waiting. And waiting can feel like one of the hardest parts of spiritual growth. You may wonder why progress feels delayed. You may question why the doors have not opened. You may ask why certain prayers remain unanswered. But waiting is not wasted. Silence is not absence. Hidden seasons are often holy seasons. What feels like delay may actually be development. God often works in unseen ways long before anything becomes visible. Roots grow underground before fruit appears above the surface. Strength is formed quietly before it is tested up. Biblically, character is refined in private before purpose is revealed openly. This is why you must not rush out of the season too quickly. Do not fill every quiet moment with distraction. Do not run back to places that no longer fit your spirit simply because solitude feels uncomfortable. Do not mistake temporary loneliness for permanent loss. Something is being built within you. Something stronger than confidence. something deeper than motivation, something that cannot be shaken when life becomes uncertain. Isolation also teaches you discernment. It helps you recognize which voices truly matter. It reveals which relationships were built on convenience rather than purpose. It shows you what deserves your energy and what no longer belongs in your life. As painful as separation can be, it creates space for clarity, and clarity is a gift. When distractions are removed, priorities become obvious. When old attachments are loosened, new direction becomes possible. When comfort is stripped away, courage begins to rise. You start to realize that you do not need constant approval. You do not need to be understood by everyone. You do not need to fit where you have outgrown. You need is trust. Trust that this season has meaning. Trust that your discomfort is not random. Trust that even in quiet places, God is present. And perhaps most importantly, trust that what feels like isolation is not the end of your story. It is preparation. Preparation for stronger faith. Preparation for greater responsibility. Preparation for a purpose that requires stability, maturity, and trust. One day you will look back on this season and understand what it was building. You will see how the loneliness taught you dependence, how the silence taught you discernment, how the waiting taught you patience, how the discomfort taught you resilience. And you will realize that what felt like separation was actually sacred refinement. The quiet moments you once feared will become the moments you are most grateful for, because they were the very places where your faith was strengthened and your purpose began to take shape. As you reflect on these signs, the unusual opposition, the deep spiritual burden, and the seasons of isolation, begin to see them through a different lens. What once felt confusing may actually be confirmation. What once felt heavy may be evidence, CE of something sacred unfolding in your life. The battles you face are not always meant to break you. Sometimes they are meant to reveal the strength God has already placed within you. The burden you carry is not there to crush your spirit. It is there to awaken your purpose. The loneliness you feel is not proof that you have been forgotten. It may be the very place where God is drawing you closer and preparing you for what lies ahead. Not everyone will understand your journey, and not everyone is meant to. Some paths are walked in quiet faith, where the only voice you can truly depend on is the voice of God. There will be moments when you feel tired, moments when you question why your road feels harder than others, moments when the pressure seems greater than your strength. But remember this: if God has allowed the challenge, He has already provided the grace to endure it. If He has marked your life with purpose, He will also provide the courage, wisdom, and strength to fulfill it. Do not run from the resistance. Do not fear the burden. Do not despise the quiet seasons. These are often the places where the deepest transformation happens. These are the moments where faith becomes stronger, character becomes deeper, and purpose becomes clearer. You may not fully understand what God is doing right now, but you do not need to understand everything to trust Him. You only need to keep walking, keep believing, and keep surrendering. There is something powerful about a life that has been touched by God. It may not always look impressive to the world, but heaven recognizes it. The tears you cried in private, the prayers you whispered when no one was listening, the battles you fought in silence, all of it matters. None of it has been wasted. Every struggle has been shaping you. Every burden has been preparing you. Every lonely season has been drawing you closer to the person you were created to become. So stand firm in what you are facing. Lift your head even when the road feels difficult. Trust that what feels painful today may be the very thing that strengthens you for tomorrow. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. You are not being forgotten, you are being formed. You are not walking through these seasons by accident. There is purpose in every step. And if these signs are present in your life, perhaps it is because you have been entrusted with something far greater than you ever imagined. Perhaps the reason the battle has been intense is because your calling is powerful. Perhaps the reason your heart feels so deeply is because your purpose reaches beyond yourself. Perhaps the reason you have been set apart is because you are being prepared to stand where few are willing to stand. Hold on to your faith. Protect your peace. Stay close to God. And never forget this truth. When God places his hand on a life, no opposition can cancel what he has ordained. No burden can outweigh his strength, and no season of isolation can separate you from his divine purpose. Walk forward with courage, because the same God who called you is the one who will carry you all the way to your destiny.